quiet person sitting alone isn't just shy. Their isolation is a survival mechanism, carefully engineered by their childhood home. You know the person. They decline every invitation. Society labels them as difficult, weird, or unsocial, acting as if there's something fundamentally wrong with preferring their own space. But here is the truth they never tell you. That solitary adult didn't choose loneliness one morning. That deep-seated need for distance was a lesson they were taught. It wasn't the kind of dramatic, headline-making abuse. It was the silent, normalized kind, the emotional vacuum that existed behind closed doors, even while the outside world praised your family's perfection. We live in a culture that worships connection, where family is everything, and everyone performs their picture-perfect relationships. But what happens when the very people meant to be your safe harbor are the ones who taught you that vulnerability is dangerous? What happens when home was the place where you learned to disappear? This is the conversation nobody wants to have because it's too raw, too uncomfortable. So let's look at what this experience actually looks like. The thing about emotional neglect is its invisibility. There are no bruises, no screaming matches, no obvious signs of distress. You had food, clothing, and a roof over your head. On paper, everything was fine, but no one ever asked how you truly felt. No one ever checked in. No one noticed your silent struggles. You came home, and your parent was physically present, but they were lost in their phone, glued to the television, or perpetually stressed and too exhausted to genuinely connect. You tried to share your day, and they offered half responses while staring at a screen. You eventually stopped trying. What was the point? You learned to solve your own problems, cook your own meals, and navigate life completely alone. Adults praised you for being so mature and independent. But you never wanted independence. You simply had no other option. Years later, what does that look like? Someone asks, "How are you feeling about this situation?" And you freeze. Why? Because no one ever taught you that your internal world mattered. No one modeled how to discuss emotions. You learned early on that your feelings were your burden to manage in solitude. So you automatically say, "I'm fine," even when you are not, because you lack the language for anything else. You become the friend who listens intently but never shares their own life. You are the partner who supports everyone but never asks for support in return. You handle everything solo because relying on others feels alien and terrifying. People assume you are just private or fiercely self-sufficient. They don't see the child who learned that no one was coming to rescue them, so they stopped expecting anyone to care. Here is a dynamic that shatters people in ways they won't realize until decades later. Scapegoating. One child is designated as the family's punching bag, the one blamed for everything. Parents are fighting. It must be something you did. Your sibling messes up. You should have been watching them. A parent is having a bad day. You are the source of their stress. The facts never mattered. The narrative was always rewritten to make you the perpetual problem. You accidentally spill juice. A normal, healthy response is, "It's okay, grab a towel. Your parents' response is, "Why are you always so clumsy? Do you ever think before you act? This is why I can't have nice things." Or your sibling breaks something and points the finger at you. You tell the truth. You weren't even home. But you are still punished because you're setting a bad example, or should have prevented it somehow. You quickly internalize the lesson. No matter what you do, you will be blamed. So you stop defending yourself. Fast forward 20 years. You are in a work meeting, and a colleague makes a mistake. You had zero involvement, but your immediate, visceral response is intense anxiety. Your mind races. How is this my fault? What did I do wrong? This learned behavior splits into two distinct adult patterns. Pattern 1, the over-apologizer. You preemptively take the blame for everything, saying, sorry, I'm so sorry." Even when you did nothing wrong, you assume you are the problem because you always were at home. You hope that if you apologize first, the attack won't be as harsh. Pattern 2, the refuser. You refuse to apologize for anything because admitting fault feels like confirming you are the villain they always claimed you were. Apologies feel like handing someone proof that you are the problem. So, you withdraw and go silent. You would rather vanish than admit fault, because fault always meant disproportionate punishment. Either way, being around people feels inherently dangerous. Why? Because people mean unpredictability. People mean potential blame. People mean you could be doing everything perfectly and still end up being cast as the bad guy. So, you retreat. You don't hate people. You simply know that being alone means no one can rewrite reality and make you the villain. Here is a dynamic that is rarely discussed. Parentification. You are 8, 9, or 10 years old, and you are essentially raising your younger siblings. You are making meals, getting them ready for school, helping with homework, and putting them to bed. Your parent is physically present, but emotionally or functionally absent. Maybe they are depressed, dealing with addiction, or simply checked out. So, you step up because someone has to. Or perhaps there are no younger siblings, but you are parenting your own parent. You listen to them vent about adult problems, manage their emotions, and ensure they are okay, becoming their therapist when you should be the one receiving care. Adults praise you for being mature for your age and responsible, but inside, you are utterly exhausted. You are a child performing adult labor with no instruction manual and no support system. What does this look like in adulthood? You are incredibly competent. You can handle anything: bills, crises, emergencies. You have it covered. You are the friend everyone calls when they need help. But when someone asks what you need, you genuinely don't know, because you never learned to have needs. You learned to be the solution, never the problem. People try to get close to you. They want to support you, help you, and be there for you, and it makes you profoundly uncomfortable. You don't know how to receive. You only know how to give. So you keep people at a distance, not because you don't care, but because allowing someone to care for you feels wrong, vulnerable, and terrifying. You learned to do everything yourself, and now, even when you don't have to, you can't stop. Solitude feels easier because alone, you don't have to navigate the deep discomfort of being cared for. Then there is the opposite extreme, the controlling parent. This is the parent who won't let you breathe. They read your private messages, check your phone, track your location, and control who you talk to, what you wear, and where you go. You have no privacy, no boundaries, and no sense of self that isn't constantly monitored. They claim it is out of love, that they are protecting you because the world is dangerous. But in reality, they are suffocating you. You are not allowed to have your own thoughts without justifying them, your own feelings without explaining them, or your own life without reporting every detail. You want to visit a friend? 20 questions. You want to close your bedroom door? What are you hiding? And if you dare to set a boundary, if you ask for space, you are immediately guilt-tripped. After everything I do for you, this is how you treat me? I'm just trying to be involved. You learn that closeness equals control, intimacy equals suffocation, and love means losing yourself. Here is the result. You grow up, and the moment you gain freedom, you guard it with your life. When someone tries to get close, your nervous system screams danger. Why? Because closeness once meant being controlled, monitored, and consumed. So you keep people at a distance. You don't let anyone get too involved in your life. You don't share your location, your plans, or your thoughts. This isn't because you are secretive. It's because privacy feels like survival. And being alone? Being alone means no one can take your autonomy. No one can make demands. No one can guilt-trip you for simply existing as your own person. Solitude is not loneliness. It is finally being able to breathe. Finally, the dynamic that makes you feel insane. Dismissal and gaslighting. Your parent hurts you, says something cruel, or does something damaging, and when you bring it up later, their response is, "I never said that," even though you remember it clearly. You're being dramatic, even though it happened and it hurt. It was just a joke, even though it wasn't funny. Now, you are the problem for being hurt by their actions. You try to express your feelings, set a boundary, or explain why something bothered you, and it is instantly dismissed, minimized, or turned back on you. Why are you always bringing up the past? You need to let things go. Stop being so emotional. And here is the real mind-bender. They never apologize, ever, because in their mind, they did nothing wrong. You are just making a big deal out of nothing. So, you learn that your feelings don't matter. Your perspective is invalid. Bringing up hurt only causes more problems. You stop talking about how you feel. You stop expecting accountability. You stop believing that your pain is worth acknowledging. Fast forward to adulthood. Someone hurts you. They don't apologize. And instead of addressing it, you either move on immediately or cut them off entirely. Why? Because you never learned the middle ground. You never learned that healthy relationships involve repair, that people can hurt you, own it, and make it right. You learned that talking about hurt is pointless, so you would rather be alone than deal with the cycle of being dismissed. You're sad? Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. You're anxious? You're being ridiculous. You're angry? Don't you dare raise your voice at me. every emotion you have is wrong. Too much, too dramatic, too sensitive. You learn to suppress everything, to keep it all locked inside. Never let anyone see what you are truly feeling, because feelings are dangerous. Feelings cause conflict. Feelings make you a target. Here is what that creates. You become an adult who cannot cry. You cannot express anger without feeling overwhelming guilt. You cannot show excitement without immediately shutting it down. You only know how to feel your feelings alone. In your room, in your car, where no one can see you. You are the safest person you have ever been with. So, you isolate, not because you want to be alone, but because being around people means performing, means pretending you don't have the emotions you were never allowed to have. Eventually, being alone stops feeling like hiding and starts feeling like the only place you can be truly real. Here is the overarching pattern. These dynamics, emotional neglect, scapegoating, parentification, control, dismissal, emotional suppression, they all teach you the same core lessons. People are unreliable. Your needs will not be met. Being your authentic self leads to conflict or rejection. Independence is the only path to survival. So, you adapt. You become fiercely self-reliant. You learn to handle everything alone. You stop expecting people to show up for you because they never did. And that adaptation doesn't vanish when you leave home. You carry it into every friendship, every relationship, every social situation. Someone tries to get close, your brain screams, danger. Someone offers help, your brain says, you can't trust it. Someone tries to know the real you, your brain warns, they will use it against you. So, you pull back. You keep your walls high. You stay on the surface. You protect yourself. And people call you distant, cold, hard to read, impossible to get close to. You are simply still operating from the survival patterns you learned when you had no other choice. Let me share something most people will never grasp. Surviving a toxic family and emerging intact is not a sign of weakness. It is not damage. It is warrior-level strength. You raised yourself. You became your own parent, your own support system, your own source of validation. You built an identity from scratch, with no blueprint and no help. Most people never have to do that. Most people spend their entire lives dependent on external validation, needing constant reassurance, falling apart when relationships end. But you know you can handle anything alone because you have already survived worse. That is a power most people will never possess. You can lose a job, a relationship, a friend group, and you will survive. You always do, because you know how to stand on your own. You know how to rebuild. That is not sad. That is not something you need to fix. That is strength that came at a cost, but it is strength nonetheless. That is strength that came at a cost, but it is strength nonetheless. You know bone deep that you can handle whatever life throws at you. That is not something to apologize for. That is not something you need to balance out with forced vulnerability. That is a rare strength that most people will never develop because they never had to. You built yourself when no one else would. You became whole without needing anyone to complete you. You figured out how to stand when everyone else needed someone to lean on. And yes, maybe that means you don't need people in the way society dictates. Maybe that means connection feels optional rather than essential. Maybe that means you are genuinely content in your solitude. That is power. That is freedom. That is what survival looks like when you win. You survived a family that failed to provide safety. You adapted. You evolved. You transformed trauma into a life skill that actually works. That is not damage. That is mastery. Society demands conformity. Open, trusting, constantly connected. They pathologize anyone who operates differently. But here is the key. Their way is not superior. It is just common. Your choice of solitude is not a deficit. It is a different operating system. One that runs on self-reliance instead of external validation. One that values peace over performance. One that protects what matters instead of granting access to everyone. You do not owe anyone an explanation for how you live. You do not owe anyone vulnerability just because they think you should be more open. You do not owe anyone access to your inner world. You built that world yourself. You get to decide who enters it. And if the answer is nobody, or only a select few, that is not sad. That is boundaries. That is standards. That is self-respect. People who have never had to protect themselves will never understand why you guard your peace so fiercely. And that is perfectly fine. Their opinion is irrelevant. You know what you survived. You know what you built. You know what you are protecting. And that is more than enough. If you know a loner who needs to hear this, share it with them. Like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought. Protect your peace. Trust your journey. Remember, you are not wrong. You are simply built for something different.